Welcome to Do It in Durham 2021. Now in its 9th year, Do It in Durham is an event series that takes place during Global Entrepreneurship Week. It is Durham Region's own forum to celebrate, inspire, and support entrepreneurship. Stay tuned as we bring on our presenter. Hello everybody, it's Teresa Shaver, the Business Advisory Center Durham, coming to you with our workshop with Melissa Jones from 3816 Creative. Welcome to Do It in Durham 2021. This is a great week where we celebrate the entrepreneurs, job creators, and innovators in our community. This takes place across the world in over 190 countries, and in Durham region, we're excited and proud to have over 40 events for you to take place in. If you'd like to tag us or screenshot any of this during this presentation, please use the hashtags Do It in Durham 2021 and GEW Canada 2021 as well. So thank you and look forward to you being with us through this presentation. 1855 Whitby is a sponsor, and they are offering a free drop-in week for entrepreneurs this week. Please drop in and see what's included and what's available for you. And then I'd also like to just thank our sponsors, FedDev Ontario, Durham Region's Economic Development Partnership, 1855 Whitby, the Town of Whitby, Spark Center, the Town of Ajax, and the City of Pickering. Without our sponsors, we wouldn't be able to make this week possible, so thank you. So we're going to hear from Melissa Jones from 3816. She's going to talk about branding being so much more than a logo. 3816 Collective been around for over 20 years and has a lot of experience in brand and marketing with a strong focus on positioning, visuals, and user design. And they bring an integrated brand strategy to digital platforms. Melissa calls Nashville, Tennessee home and is found exploring new sites with her pup, a golden doodle, Tucker. So these are the companies they've worked with. They worked with Evernote, Shutterstock, Avion Tequila, Absolute Vodka, Michelob Ultra, Artifact Uprising, Rising Tide Society, Grana Clothing, and Folgers Coffee. Today, what she's going to help you do is demystify branding and really get into depth about why it's more than just a logo. It is a 90-minute session, and I'm sure that you know today messaging is very busy. There's lots of it. And you as a business owner have exactly 8 seconds to capture the attention of your audience, which just so happens to be the memory of a goldfish.
So statistically, before 2020, it was noted that it would take at least 5 to 7 touch points of a customer with your brand before they would ever consider purchasing. That number is now double. That number is now double. It also means that if we are in a sales-based field or a service-based field, that it is going to take 3 to 4 more times the amount of follow-up and nurturing our leads to actually see a closed sale. Now, I could choose to ignore this, but the reality is that data doesn't lie. And so my brand has to be more compelling, and I must know where my customer attention is. So not only have we learned how many days in a row that we can wear sweatpants, we've learned the value of a website. We've also learned how quickly and how many times our dogs or our children might interrupt our Zoom calls. We've also learned that users have gotten smarter. Users have gotten smarter. What used to work on a website now no longer works. So I want to share with you a story that I think is so common. So my parents live in Seattle, Washington, which is a very different environment and state of the world than living in the South, in Nashville, Tennessee right now. And so over the past year, my mom and dad started using Instacart and apps to order their groceries, particularly because we did have a COVID case last Christmas. So we were all locked down in the house and we had to do pickup orders for our groceries, right? And here, my mom, someone that used to be someone that went into 3 grocery stores as a digital immigrant, she is now attempting to order her groceries online, right? And she's trying to get things for holidays. She's trying to have things that feel celebratory for our family, even though we're locked down in the house, because luckily everyone still had their taste, right? And she goes into a popular grocery store app that isn't Instacart, and it takes her an hour to complete her grocery shopping on her phone. And she's getting more and more frustrated as time goes on. And she looks at me in exasperation about 45 minutes in, and she says, Melissa, can I just throw you my phone and you do it? Now, I also teach UI and UX design as a professor. So if anyone should know how to use this app, it should be me, right? And you guys, I went through the app and it took me just as long to complete this. So what does this tell me? Does it tell me that this grocery store app probably didn't think about the user first? Absolutely. But it also tells me that a 66-year-old woman outside of Seattle, Washington, wants to order her groceries with ease, and she wants it to be intuitive. And it also means life has forced her attention and her consumer behavior in a different direction. And the brand she was trying to buy from assumed a lot from her to the point that she was exasperated and forced into something she didn't want to do. This tells me that customers have gotten really smart, and most likely our online platforms and our sites have not evolved that much over the past 18 months. Now, some of you all, particularly if you're in the ideating and starting phase, I hear this all the time. Do I still need a website? My answer is yes. And your website needs to do the work. Why? Because your customer is smart. They're smart. They're not as dumb as we once thought they were. Now, no person will say, I believe my customers are dumb outright, right? No person would actually say that. But the reality is that people have learned and grown to expect so much more from the online presences that they're interfacing with. So more than a unique selling proposition or a value proposition, our users now expect more. And so it's time to get granular, look at our data sets that we have, and choose to cause a disruption. Choose to cause a disruption. I want you to complete this phrase for me. So go on ahead, grab your note-taking app, and write the following. My brand disrupts by. My brand disrupts by. And if you're feeling very confident, go on ahead and pop the completion in the chat. Yeah. My brand disrupts by being driven toward client results with incredible content. We're not here for vanity metrics. We're not here solely for virality. We're here for dollar signs and to actually see people's dreams with their businesses come true. That is my brand disruption. Now, many of you guys, when you were doing your introductions, you specifically have a very clear understanding of what you do and who you support. But I want you to think about, outside of being a different messenger, how is that different than your competitors within the space? Now, as you think about brands, I want you to think about really, really popular brands. I want you to think about brands like Nike. I want you to think about brands like Apple. How have these brands positioned themselves over the years within a market where they are very aware of their competitors, but they are also very aware of their message? They're aware of their competitors, but they're also very aware of their message. No job is too small. Great. As I look to those brands, I would also argue that there are certain brands that almost have like a cult following, where people are clamoring and waiting in line for their products. where people are speculating, what's the next thing that's going to come out? There's already implicit buzz and excitement. Beautiful. And as I look to those products, I literally look at products that are a part of my daily life, right? Not only did they get my attention and did they acquire me as a customer, but anytime I've had an issue with something, for me, I just walk 2 blocks to the Apple store, and my buddy Paul sees how much I use my computer and knows that he'll never ship out my computer for a repair because my life is on my computer, right? And so because I'm a loyal customer to Apple and they can see my battery charge cycles, I know that I'm always going to be taken care of by Apple and they're going to back their products. And so while sometimes I go to the store and I feel like I'm walking out limping, because I don't know about you, but as a brand designer, I burn through graphics processors like nobody's business. I specifically know I will always be taken care of by this company and they're gonna back their products. So every single time a device starts to fail or hardware runs dry, I am going to keep on coming back. So we've already talked about this, 10 to 15 touch points of a brand prior to acquirement. Now I want you to think about, I just described Apple and Nike, but I want you to think about your personal best brand experiences. Whether it is a cup of coffee, whether it's a dining and restaurant experience that you love, and whether it's open right now or closed, you can't wait to go back to. I want you to think through what are some of my absolute best brand experiences. Maybe list out 2 to 3. And then ask yourself, why? Why do I love these brand experiences? What makes me want to come back?
Melissa, is that background noise from your location? Melissa, I don't know. Is it from you? Like it's from your office, the background noise?
And feel free to pop in the chat what some of your best brand experiences are. Love to hear. Perfect. Yes, Lululemon. Nordstrom's, Buick. Okay, so next we're going to talk through the customer journey. Now, many of you guys might have seen this, but I actually like to add another layer of this, specifically because it allows us to see this both from a user empathy perspective and a touch point perspective. Now, if any of you all are familiar with sales and marketing, this is a very commonly used journey that's laid out, but we're going to break it down piece by piece, and then we're actually going to talk about specific brand points, and I'm going to give you all examples of how I do this within my own service-based business, and then you're going to fill it out yourselves. Okay, so first, awareness. How does someone know that you exist? Okay, how does someone know that you exist? Through our brands, we're telling someone why they should care if they don't, and we're getting very loud. Those are the 2 things that our brand is typically doing. So within the awareness phase, first we have to let someone know that we exist. And second, we have to let someone know, then we shift them to the consideration phase, right? And within the consideration phase, this is a customer specifically stating, why do I want to work with them? So there's thousands of other marketing and brand agencies that exist in the world. Why do they want to work with me? When they find me on a social media channel or when they go to my website, what are they looking for as they're considering a purchase? And then acquisition. specifically once this is when someone has now purchased a service or a good from you. You have now acquired them as a customer, right? And then we have service. So this is when the service is rendered. This is where the product is rendered. But oftentimes within service as well, there is actually going to be a moment of conflict. Now, most oftentimes in business, we have a propensity to avoid conflict, right? You might have even said to yourself, like, oh my goodness, I just wish client processes were smooth flowing. Like, why is it that conflict is always imminent? Or I just wish I could have satisfied customers when they receive this product and there's an absolute rave review from them, right? Like, I just want continual rave reviews. Why do we have all of these problems, right? Well, most likely within our customer journey, we'll actually never shift from service to loyalty until conflict both exists and is successfully resolved. Not only are we meeting the expectation of the customer, but we're exceeding the expectation of the customer, and we successfully have walked them through conflicts. We've successfully walked them through conflicts. But here's the problem. Most of us within our customer journey and our brand thinking stop at the point of acquisition. We stop at the point of acquisition within our customer experience. Dare I say, our brand experience. So we spend all of our time at the very front end of this funnel, right? We want to get loud on social media. We're spending all this money on paid ads. We want to see as many people come through our landing pages and our data points. And then we finally get a conversion. And then our systems are crap. We don't have sales scripts for our customer service for products. Our unboxing experience is inferior. We overpromise and we underdeliver. And in the process, we have a lot of disenchanted and dissatisfied customers because we've only thought about halfway through the customer journey. We've only thought about halfway through the customer journey. But here's the truth. Did you know it takes you about 3 times more, both the time and money, to continually go get new customers as it is to rebook and retain loyalty of existing customers? And we spend all this time getting more and more people into our funnel, more brand awareness. I need to get louder. I need to be more direct in my messaging. And we forget about the back end of our customer journey. So now it's your turn to fill these in. And I'm going to give you an example of both user empathy and touch points within these for my own business. Okay, so we're going to walk you through them. So I typically start with someone who is short on time, who feels overwhelmed, who doesn't want to continually educate themselves and needs an outside perspective, or they might not yet be ready to hire someone in person for their marketing and branding, right? So they're coming to me. Okay, so specifically, they're stating things like, I'm overwhelmed with everything I need to do. I'm looking for a fresh start. So when I say user empathy, I am specifically knowing what are some things my customers might say. And then we have specifically touch points. So things like my social posts, my ongoing content marketing. This might even be more direct lead gen engagement with things like LinkedIn and Facebook. And then someone might be now to the point of past awareness consideration. So they're thinking about outsourcing a task. It is very clear that they don't have time to do this. It might be a task that has sat on their to-do list for 2 to 3 months and they just keep on pushing it off, right? And it's like, this is just never going to get done. I'm tired of putting it off. And then they're asking, why should I work with them? Why should I work with 3816 Creative? touch points for this would include a social post, but now that they're actually considering something, they're wanting proof of work. So they're going to shift from a social post to specifically a website. Now, my content marketing most likely is going to be slightly more updated than a website because it's going to be something that is daily done, whereas website updates, content and articles might happen once a week. And most likely, at least within a service-based business, you're going to have a very low-level informal sales call. So for me, this is a discovery call. And within this, I'm going to be able to gauge the project, the timeline, the client's budget, and figure out the best fit for them within our business. Okay. And then acquisition. The user might say things like, I can't wait to get started. I'm so excited to see my brand and how this all comes together. They also specifically have a need. Now, they're not going to express this need to you, but I always experience this within my customers. They actually need education as a part of a service. They either potentially have never hired a designer before, they might have worked with other agencies and had different varying levels of experience. And so they're going to need education and reassurance as a part of this service, right? Their touch points here, they're going to purchase a package, they're going to have client onboarding, a kickoff call, and then specifically workflows. Now, you'll notice if you are a service-based business, a lot of the things within the touch points here are within the backends, the CRM, and the systems that you already have within your business. These are not what I would call sexy or flashy brand expressions, right? But they are levels of excellence that you are going to showcase within consistency and onboarding clients. So I specifically have a CRM I use. I also have an internal project management system that I use that are very, very clear with how I'm going to bring someone through this with a level of professionalism. Now, if you are more so in a product-based business, this is going to be reassurance of your purchases, right? So things like your customization of your email receipts, someone letting them know that their order has been shipped, a tracking number, things like even if they're in consideration, an abandoned cart email, right? As well as now that I have a customer, I would also, within the service section within a product business, look for asking for, you ordered this product, how was it? So asking them for feedback and reviews. Oftentimes we don't have social proof and reviews because we don't ask for them. So getting really good at asking these. Now, when it comes to service, right? So they have now purchased this and they're receiving the service. I love what I'm getting. I can't wait to refer you to my friends. And then they're going to have ongoing emails for support, right? So I'm supporting someone through the service of this product. I'm also going to have a variety of both email and call-based communication, as well as distinct processes in place. Now, in the design world, this oftentimes means approval sign-offs, communication of pre-production deadlines, being in my email and responsive, also doing things like setting out of office replies as consideration to your customer base. If you don't want to feel like you're on call all the time, set a polite out of office reply. Other touch points, appointment reminders. So whatever your scheduler you're using, making sure you're having appointment reminders, either from an SMS capacity or an email capacity or both. Having things like feedback forms. Now, one that we don't ever want to talk about, but is so important whether you're in the product-based business or the service-based business. Remember, this is how we move someone within the customer journey from service to loyalty as a brand, is conflict emails. Now, here's the hard part about conflict emails. Is if you are the one directly dealing with the conflict email, maybe you're still in your first stages of business and you're a solopreneur, you're a team of one. When someone sends you a conflict-based email, most likely we have immediate responses to conflict that are deeply personal. And to extract all emotion and you have a very politically correct and kindly worded email when we are in the thick of a fight or flight conflict response is very challenging to do. So I encourage you to actually take some CEO time and draft conflict email templates. The same would apply to customer service templates. Now, typically when it comes to more product or event-based, like in-person ticket sales or a physical purchase that ties to something in the physical, your conflict email template response are going to be far more concrete. And so there are things that you can draft ahead of time, and they make things very, very easy. And also knowing what you are or are not willing to give within those kind of moments. Specifically getting very good at wording these. So whether it's a request for refunds or potentially even within service-based businesses and larger packages, sometimes people do get very conflictual and pursue litigation. So being mindful that whatever you write can serve as a paper trail. And so just to be very aware of that as you're drafting these and how you choose to word them. Okay, now we're going to shift over to loyalty. So loyalty, I always want to work with this person. I wish I would have booked sooner. They leave reviews. Now, from a touch point basis, they could be a retainer in ongoing accounts. They could be invited to a referral program, purchasing multiple services, or for me, I actually truncate their launch day of their site and everything they've been working on together at the same time. So then my business account, particularly if their account is slightly smaller, has natural organic cross collaboration, and it feels like a moment of celebration without adding undue pressure. Do I have an example to show a template or a formula statement for conflict emails and conversations? No, I don't. Specifically, things that would be really important within a product business would be my package didn't arrive, my package is damaged, I'm dissatisfied with the quality of my product, right? So you will start to think through, the more you're in business, you probably will have very similar situations arise. Within a service-based business, particularly like mine, oftentimes the conflict emails come around missing content, stagnation in timelines, and revision requests, and boundaries with scope of work. They usually fall within one of those 4 categories, right? So as I'm thinking about these things, I'm going to have emails that are specifically drafted appropriately, and then they're saved as canned emails within my CRM. So I just pull them up and I adjust them. Pull them up and adjust them, just like my follow-up emails for proposal signs, things like that. Any questions about the customer journey? No. Okay, great. Okay, so I want you to think about your brand touch points. Your brand touch points. And I want you to go on ahead and fill this out for your brand. Knowing you're going to have 10 to 15 prior to the point of acquisition. As you're thinking through your user empathy, I want you to think through, who is your customer? If you're starting within your business within year 1 to year 3, most likely you will be working with a target customer, an ideal client profile, an avatar, a user persona. Those are all synonyms for the same thing. That is potentially 6 months to a year previous from where you were. So oftentimes your target customer when you're first starting out is someone that we could qualify as a peer of yourself. But when you're looking at your user empathy points, I want you to think about things someone might say kind of like off the cuff, but they have a huge level of truth and they reveal a very true pain point in someone's life. Now you'll notice, I'm gonna just come back here, all of these items within the top section aren't solely about deliverables, and they do relate to time and money. Time and money is always a pain point for someone where someone is willing to pay for convenience in a service-based industry. That's always going to be a thing. But I encourage you to choose to get more specific than solely time and money as you're drafting these out. Okay, so let's keep on cruising. I know that these might take a bit of time for you to fill in. Now, the next question I always hear from someone is, I launched this thing. It was amazing. People were so excited about it when I was doing behind the scenes posts. And then I launched it and I heard nothing. No one bought my course. I spent money on ads. It didn't really move the needle. I have no idea where my customers are. I have no idea where my customers are. And particularly for those of you that are in the ideation state of your business, I want you to, oftentimes people will refer to their businesses as their babies, like their first children, because they usually take about a year to start. And it feels very close and it takes a lot of effort. But most likely, when you're in the ideation part of your business and you spend all this time and you draft things out in your moleskin and you take yourself to coffee shops and get things done, you most likely aren't really bouncing ideas off of individuals, nor are you choosing to validate your idea with your ideal customer, right? And when that is happening, we actually don't know if anyone wants to buy what you're selling until it's a perfect, finalized, packaged, tidied up product. And then because we don't know that people are wanting this and we're not providing a 30 or 60-day content marketing on-ramp where we're talking about one idea over and over again, usually we're like, oh, I couldn't talk about something for 30 or 60 days in a row. I would be so bored of it. Like people would be exhausted and tired. I'm like, well, actually right now in the digital age, your customers will be just about understanding what you're about trying to sell them and ready to purchase of a 3 to 4 figure amount of an investment, right? So when we're thinking about where our customers are and developing our user personas, I want you to get incredibly specific. I want you to get incredibly specific. So you can have a name, you can have a picture, but I want you to hone in specifically on these 4 items. What are their pain points? What keeps them up at night? What are the causes that they absolutely burn for? And it's like, it's such a big pain point in their life psychologically that it's going to propel them to action. What are their gains? Now, oftentimes people look at their gains as very clear deliverables, or I'm going to save them time or money. But specifically, what else do you provide? So I want you to think about it a little bit more from an ethos or emotional perspective as well. And then what do they need? If they were to go into Google tomorrow looking for what you have to offer, what are they searching for? What are they searching for? And then what do they value? So yesterday, Maggie laid out your brand's core values, but what do your customers value? Remember how I talked about getting specific? I also want you to know this persona's customer attention. So where are they hanging out online? P.S. It might not be Instagram or TikTok. It might be. but it also might not be. What do they spend their money on? Where are the brands that they're already willing to hand money over easily, right? What is their average salary? Where are they located? What do they live in? What do they drive? What brand of clothing do they wear? Get as specific with these personas as you possibly can. As we look at brand messaging and positioning, we actually speak to these 4 things. We speak to these 4 things. And so as we're positioning ourselves within a market, we're both aware of this and we're aware of our competitor analysis. I'm going to talk a little bit more about competitor analysis in a second. So go on ahead and list out the pains, gains, needs, and values of your customer. If you are a general service provider where your packages might have tiered offerings, maybe it's like an ascension plan, maybe it's, if you're a photographer, it's one shoot versus clients on retainer, things like that, you most likely will have one user persona for all of these things. However, you also might have multiple user personas based off of product or knowing your demographic and psychological data. So you could have one or multiple personas, but specifically if you have products in a product-based business where, let's say, for example, you're an e-commerce retailer and you have a men's line with this brand and you have a women's line with this brand, these are going to, obviously those would be 2 very different user personas as far as gender, potentially age, things like that. How's everyone doing with your pains, gains, needs, and values of your customers? Fantastic. Okay, so data doesn't lie. Now, some people would tell me that data, you can make it say whatever you want. But I would argue for most of us, once we've been in business for a while, we have data sets. And then we get into our daily tasks of operating our business and we ignore them. We oftentimes ignore them, right? If I were to ask many of you, what is your sales sheet for 2022? You might not have one. And if I were to ask you what your marketing plan is for Q4, you also might not have one. And we're like a month in to Q4, right? So as we look at these things, I want you to be willing to face your numbers. Be willing to face your numbers. Many of us, whether we like to agree or not, both the positioning of our brand and our willingness to face numbers has a lot to do with our mindset around money. And we aren't willing to be honest about our failures. And so instead we choose to look the other way, or we create sales sheets and projections that are either far over what we're actually able to execute within the framework of our companies or far beneath what we're able to execute. So let's talk about taking an honest look at our data. And if you're starting out in your business, I'm also going to create very easy ways for you to get fast and rapid data sets and forms of customer validation before you ever launch an idea. Sound good? Okay, so we're going to break these down one by one. Competitor analysis. So most of us, as we're getting into business, we might have worked for a competitor. We might be aware of other competitors within our space. This is particularly relevant within digital product builds or software as service-based companies. We're also going to find that this exists within brick and mortars, right? If you are in a town where you are creating a brick and mortar business, you're probably very aware of who your competitors are. But I want you to think past colors and visuals of design. I also want you to take a moment and think through, who are my top competitors, both regionally, nationwide, and if my brand were to grow up in 5 years, who do I want to be, right? You could probably think of those things pretty immediately. And then we're going to complete a SWOT analysis of them. So what are the strengths of these competitors? What are the weaknesses of them? What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? What are the opportunities? And what are the threats? And what I typically do within these is I go through and I will try to find user reviews. I will look at LinkedIn profiles. So even when I'm doing competitor analysis and brand research, I'm going to go in and look at someone's total online digital footprint. What are their customers saying? Maybe, for example, I have a company approach me to build an app, which has happened all the time, or they're approaching me midway through an app build process. And they specifically, I will actually go into the user reviews on the App Store, and I will look at the most helpful, the most critical, the median, and the average number of the downloads, because I will be able to gauge the popularity of competitors really fast and have immediate user-based interviews, right? So that's a great way to do competitor analysis pretty quickly, even before you have a product that's built, right? So we talked about the strengths of your competitors, the weaknesses of your competitors, the opportunities, and then what are the threats? So what are the threats that these competitors actually pose to you as a business? Now, what I like to do, because I'm a very visual person, is I oftentimes like to set these up as a side-by-side kind of column, almost like what you would see with checks and minuses within a digital subscription where there's a tiered pricing plan, right? So that for me is really, really helpful to kind of organize data and then gain key insights. Now I'm also going to look at my Google Analytics. By looking at Google Analytics, particularly if I have created appropriate click events on a website, I'm going to be able to see both the demographics and the psychographics of my users, where in the world they're coming from, what their peak times are, who are repeat visitors, and the top referrals. So for me, my top referrals are Facebook, from Facebook group lead engagement, as well as Pinterest because of ongoing backlinks within my articles / blog, right? So those are my two top referrals. And so I'm really aware of that. You'll notice not Instagram, not TikTok, right? That because people are coming to me for a business's service-based business, but they're also oftentimes businesses, my main focuses are networks where people are looking for the services that I'm already offering, and that is where the traffic is coming in from my website. Okay. So then I'm going to look at my social insights. So I'm going to specifically look at what is gaining traction based off of my social insights, and then what are my highest levels of link clicks. Now, I know a lot of times, particularly when it comes to Instagram, people ask, should I have a personal account, creator account, or a business account? My recommendation is that you shift to a business account so you can get a larger traction of insights within the app, particularly now that the link feature has been unlocked for every individual. That's actually going to allow you to create direct and clear links for your users and have an additional strong form of driving website traffic, mainly through stories. Then we're going to have conversions, right? Now, of course, conversions can be clicks into your website, and then from there, tracking what lead gen or purchases you have, right? So gauging conversions is really key. CRMs oftentimes will do this for you, or if you have a more traditional lead sheet that you're building in Excel and a contact form where you haven't yet invested in a CRM, you're going to be able to gauge these based off of percentages and likelihood in which someone closes and keeping an active pipeline for your lead gen. Okay, so we talked about click events, conversions, then we can talk about social proof, right? So this also refers to reviews. So we would have these placed on our website, but then also, are we asking people for reviews? And then what are easy ways that we can go about getting reviews? So whether you're a product-based business or you're a service-based business, you can always craft and curate an unboxing experience to delight your customers. Now, I specifically do this at the end of a process because it allows my clients to talk about the brand that they created, who they used. They will most likely put it on Instagram. They will talk about how great the service is, and then they'll tag me in it. It also, for me, includes a branded USB with all of their files that are already on their client portal in Google Drive, because my contract states I'll only store their files for free for 6 months, in addition to a business card that they can then pass on, right? So this allows me to have additional touch points for someone, and I include within the job cost of the service the amount for that client gift. Because it is considered a client gift in the United States, it's a moment of generosity and the client does not know they are purchasing it outright, there is no sales tax on the physical goods. So that is a way that I'm creating an additional touch point and another moment for social proof. Then we can also think about user-generated content. So outside of unboxing experiences, how much are people tagging your brand? Are they using a specific hashtag? Are they entering giveaways? Things like that. And then the demographics and psychographics. The ideal user personas that I have created based off of my research. As time goes on, I'm actually going to be able to tell if these are true and accurate or if they're not. Who am I marketing to versus who is actually buying are oftentimes very distinct and different conversations. And I need to be aware of those as time goes on. Okay, next let's talk about conversion rate optimization, CRO for short. So you have someone that has been delighted by your visuals. They are compelled by your offer. They think your lifestyle brand is stunning. They come into your site and they click around maybe to 2 pages and then they don't do anything. They bounce back off, right? You hear crickets. What happened to those people where I just paid loads of money to Facebook for advertising? What just happened? Most likely our sites don't have clear user hierarchy and we haven't thought through a user empathy map of what we want someone to do versus what the user wants to do, right? So here are some great things to think through when it comes to optimizing your site for conversions. If you are a service-based business, by solely putting a contact form on your website, you are telling people you do not want to talk to them. But what, Melissa, a contact form tells them I want to talk to them. No, it doesn't, because on their phone, they're not going to take time to fill it out, and 80% of your users are going to access your website through your phone. So I'm going to have a quick link for someone to click on it and they have the immediate ability to text me. I'm going to have an immediate email that goes to an info. It's not a direct email to me personally, even though it might redirect if you're a team of one. And I'm going to have book a call as a direct CTA in the top right-hand corner, because on desktop, users read in a Z-shaped formation. On a phone, they read in an uppercase T formation, unless it's an app, and then it's an uppercase I, right? So I'm aware of user-based behavior. Other things that you might notice, too many calls to action. Too many calls to action. So users, when we introduce more things for them to do, they get confused and then they do less. While users are smarter with what they expect from websites, they are also simultaneously very lazy. I know that sounds funny to say, but we want to have users burn the least amount of calories possible to get through a funnel. So if I can do something where they have 1 click instead of 3, I'm going to do so. Now, remember, we just talked about a very direct call to action at the very top. If you would be an e-commerce store, this would be your cart specifically. That would be in the top right. But then we also notice sometimes people might need to go through a bit more long form sales copy on a site. And then I'm going to balance more transitional CTAs like a learn more, a get started, a read if someone really does want to gather information, and I'm going to juxtapose those call to actions, even though it might be going to the same exact thing, right? So it's my goal is to always on my site get people to go to book a call. That's my goal every single time, right? But I might do request more info or learn more as a transitional CTA within my buttons and my user interface to guide people through a process that feels a bit more nurtured than as direct. Another major thing is oftentimes we are still building our mobile site designs as second rather than first. But we know user-based behavior is actually going to mobile first. Now, oftentimes this can become a breakdown between designers and developers, but we specifically I find oftentimes that a developer, if I don't guide them with mobile first instructions, they are going to create a 1-by-1 stack of a desktop site, which means an experience that is very much an infinite scroll and not dynamic content. It's very boring. Stephen Pressfield has been known for writing books like The War of Art and a book called No One Wants to Read Your Expletive. But the reality is that most people don't want to read. They want to scan. And so as we're writing copy, we want to compel someone and speak to their pains and their gains. Now, oftentimes within marketing psychology and sales copywriting psychology, tactics are utilized to solely speak to the pain points of a customer. But if we only do that, we're never going to delight and inspire someone. So I want you to have a balance of both when you're thinking about increasing the CRO of our site. And then with every offer, with everything that we talk about on social, I want you to have a clear call to action. A clear call to action, right? So sometimes that's a call to action for engagement. Sometimes it's to drive traffic to your site, but we never post to social media arbitrarily or thinking like, oh crap, I just need to post something to social today. We post strategically and with things in mind, knowing that you might talk about one item with a strategic 30-day on-ramp to get someone to repeatedly come back into your site and to see a sales page again and again because they're contemplating and considering a large purchase. And we're okay if they come back in multiple times, and then we actually build advertising campaigns around retargeting those users that we're nurturing in a longer sequence. This is specifically relevant to coaching programs, digital courses, anything that would serve as a non-tripwire product in the digital space that's over a 3-figure investment. Okay. A tripwire product would be any smaller offer that is under $100 price point that makes it a very easy yes and a very clear deliverable for a customer. So knowing these items, what does your data say about your brand? What does your data say about your brand currently? So my first question is are people coming to your website or are they inquiring with you through a social media channel? Currently, if I were to go look at your website and do an audit, would you have a begrudging moan right now internally? Or would you even want to say to me, well, I spend a lot of time on my social media, but my website isn't that great? If that's the case, I really want you to consider what you will do to improve that within the next quarter. Okay. I also want you to think through, okay, as a new business, what percentage do you recommend investing into advertising? You're spending about 10%. I always tell people 10% is correct, but I'm going to assume, hey, Joseph, is this paid ads? Okay. Do you have at least 2,000 users coming into your website organically a month through a ongoing organic content marketing strategy? Don't spend another dollar on advertising that's paid. You're wasting your money. Here's why I say this. You're welcome. Specifically, if you don't have $2,000 or 2,000 organic hits, it tells me that you're not utilizing social media tools. And the reality is that you will always have to pay to play when it comes to advertising. So I would rather you continue to create content and figure out what sticks and have customer validation based off of data points rather than always feeling a need to pay more to play. Statistically, unless you are an e-commerce business or unless you are a higher education, wellness, new year, new start kind of business, your cost for advertising in Q4 is going to be 4 to 5 times the amount that it was in Q3. And you're being outbid by larger competitors and you're seeing little to no ROI. This idea that if we pay enough in advertising, that we will scale and scale quickly isn't necessarily true if we aren't also doing the organic work at the same time. Here's what's typically happens if someone sees an ad. If they're interested in what you're selling, and if it's incredible copy and very compelling creative, they might click through. But the first thing they're going to go check is this person legit? I've never heard of them before. Who are they? Right? And then they go and they discover that your brand foundation doesn't exist. You don't have following. You don't have equity on your website. Your website isn't converting, right? So then we're spending all of this money to get someone into an incomplete funnel. Okay, does that make sense? Yes. Okay, helpful. Okay, so as you look at these pieces, what are you discovering about your brand? And if data doesn't lie, what platforms do you need to focus and double down on with your messaging and positioning to create an integrated strategy? I always tell people when it comes to brand content strategy and positioning, I want you to think about every single digital platform as basically a mutual fund, right? So you might have something that has high level virality on one social media channel, but it's not bringing about conversions. And you might have played with paid advertising over here and it hasn't yielded. Now, the reality is you might not be doing all of these things at one time, or you might not be like high levels of virality and high levels of gross income coming in from all of these platforms. But the reality is that we want to create messaging that actually speaks to one another and do it in a very thoughtful way, and then backlinking. And then when we're backlinking, it actually is increasing our organic SEO, right? So as you're doing this, we want to think about where our customer attention is. Where has customer attention gone over the past 18 months? People are more inundated now than they've ever been. So where are they hanging out? Maybe it is a podcast for you. Maybe it's LinkedIn. Maybe it is TikTok, right? Like figuring out where your customers actually are online and then doubling down on those, knowing that you can spin up and dial down other areas within your brand's mutual fund as you need to and as you're ready to take on more. Okay, so I want to ask you, in the next 30 days, what are you going to do? In the next 30 days, what are you going to do? Many of you at the very beginning of this said, I know I need to build a strategy. I know I need to build a strategy. So I want you to get specific. How do you want to grow? What will it take? And then what do you need to put in place in your life or your team's life to go further? So get incredibly specific here. If you're saying, I know from this conversation, I have no ideas what my numbers are, and I need to go do my brand research. Great. How are you going to time block that within the next 30 days within your schedule to make this happen? One of my biggest lessons is to actually block in time in your schedule to handle the tasks in which to work on your business rather than working in your business. I call it CEO time. CEO time. And by blocking in this time, you're actually going to be able to tackle a lot of these projects that oftentimes get pushed away. Now, what I want you to do though, is I want you to protect this time with as much protection as you would a sales meeting of a potential $500,000 sale. I want you to protect this time to actually move forward on your goals. Okay. Now, when it comes to website, maybe you need someone to specifically help you from this. You're like, hey, I actually need outside help. We'd be happy to help you. There are all sorts of agencies that would love to help you. But I want you to look at your data to figure out where are people falling off and what actually isn't compelling. For some of you, you need to look back at that customer journey and understand that we've never validated ideas with customers, and that's why things might not be bought, right? So our goal is to do the research and ask people that maybe are potential customers why they're not buying, and do 10 to 20 user interviews to really understand customer validation and who is our customer, and are we at all targeting who our ideal customer is. It is now time for Q&A. So if you have questions, go on ahead and pop them in the chat.
Melissa, thank you so much. I wanted to just bring one of the things I thought of as we were going through this is that it is so much more than a logo, right? Can you see me okay? Can you hear me? I don't think she can hear.
I can hear you now.
Can you hear me now? Okay. I was going to say that one of the things I really appreciated it is that many of us sometimes just look at the brand and the logo and the graphics, and there's all this other data that we really need to be looking at. And I love the take of the customer experience journey. I think is really powerful. And certainly I also loved what you just showed us before this of what to put together for, you know, what goes under the hood, what's the data analytics that we need to collect, what are the social insights we can get. So I found it very, very useful for sure. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. It looks like we have quite a bit of questions coming through.
Yeah,
so let's start here. Should we be designing our brand around our customers' needs? Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. If you aren't designing your brands around your customers' needs, most likely you're designing them for your personal design preferences. And if you aren't your persona, you're literally choosing to design something that isn't validated. So why would you do that? Okay, so just starting out my business, I'm in mental health space. Any tips for how that would work with branding? Absolutely. Oh my goodness. Yes. I want you to look at, there's so many mental health experts. I'm going to specifically name out some very, very popular ones. Dr. Caroline Leaf. Particularly if you're in the mental health space and you are a therapist, I want you to actually, yes, no, it's Dr. Leaf, not Lee. She has 636,000 followers on Instagram. I'll type it.
Thank you, if you would. And this is one of our amazing things to learn is that today, we have so much information at our fingertips that 10 years ago we couldn't get on our competition and on people doing something similar. So there's just so much that you can get by looking at what's going on looking at competitors, looking at what other people are doing in your field. Thank you for sharing.
Okay, so I did this not to everyone, but specifically,
I'll change it, yeah.
I would love for, okay, so Dr. Caroline Leaf, Mike Foster, Spear is here. They're all mental health field. Something that's really important for mental health. You must state your disclaimers of what you are and what you are not. Everyone everywhere is a life consultant and a life coach. At this point in time, it's very popular to be offering advice in that field. The more you can get specific on what you're offering and what your credentials are, the greater level of trust you're going to have. in traction. Oftentimes within mental health as well, people are like, oh, I actually want to build something larger than myself. But the reality is in mental health, people are wanting to work with professionals, right? Like just like you go to a doctor, that doctor's bedside manner and rapport is really important. If you go to a therapist, you might be like, I'm going to date a few therapists, right? So really start thinking about how you're going to build this around a personal brand. And then as you book yourself out and raise your prices, then you bring on associates who study underneath you. Like that's the terminology used to grow and scale that appropriately. Okay, let's see additional questions.
Rosanna asked a question.
If we narrow it down to our first task on our list, what do you recommend? Yeah, go through Maggie's talk from yesterday and identify your mission statement, your vision, your core values, your why. That's going to affect a lot of the positioning. I would also like to tag on, if your brand has a core value, I want to ask you how your customers would know it exists, because oftentimes the brand, vision, mission, why, all of those things are internal communication, but not necessarily anything that we would couch in an external expression, right? Unless maybe, for example, you're a nonprofit, but most likely we aren't, right? So I want to ask you if kindness or if excellence is a core value of your brand or the way you go about doing your business, how would a customer know? And that will directly correlate to the touch points on your customer journey. I'm an image consultant. What tips would you have to offer as a newbie? Look at your data and do customer validation surveys. Who is in need of an image consultant already within your sphere, and why are they choosing not to purchase from you?
There's a question a little higher up. Ryan says, in terms of building awareness, where do you feel resources are best spent?
I would say first, your foundation. So if you don't have your foundation, if you don't have your site, you can spin your wheels proverbially on social media. And yes, that can be low hanging fruit, but if you aren't driving traffic to anything, you're going to struggle to really gain traction, right? You don't own social media at all. So why would you continually spin your wheels on something where you're actually not moving the needle toward anything?
And also
Okay.
just a call to action, sorry, for a Business Advisory Center Durham. So if you need help going into a bit more detail with your core, your vision, your mission, your values, you can always meet with the business advisor at BACD.
Yes.
Thank you, Melissa.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is specifically, if you want to take the next step working with this, you can scan this QR code on the left-hand side. It will take you to all our links. There's also a free content calendar there tied to a masterclass if you want to grab that for free, an additional resource, particularly for those of you who are wanting to create your content strategy for the next 30 days. Also includes a direct link to meet with us and chat further, particularly if you're like, hey, we either need consulting or I am ready to go into Q1. When you talked about my website, I internally am groaning and I know I need to fix this. Please help. We're here to help you out. Go ahead and scan this QR code and we'll take it from there.
Thank you for being a guest in this presentation. If you would like to book an appointment with us here at the Business Advisory Center Durham, just follow the information right on the closing slide, and we look forward to seeing you.